Okay, the last section of our problems tonight is going to be story problems. I know we all dislike story problems. However, the nice thing about these story problems is they're pretty easy to do because they're all based on right triangles. So when you go to do these story problems, these are the hints that I would give you. Number one, start out, obviously read the problem. And sketch a right triangle. We know we're going to need it anyway because all of these are going to have right triangles. So read the problem, sketch a right triangle. Then label the information, label the triangle with info from the story. And then finally, you're going to write and solve a trig function. You will determine which trig function to use based on what you see in that picture. We're going to stick with the OG3 trig functions. We're not going to do any of the other trig functions. We're going to just stick with the OG3. So the three that you're going to be looking for is going to be the sine of an angle, whose formula is opposite over hypotenuse, or the cosine of an angle, whose adjacent over hypotenuse, or the tangent of an angle, whose opposite over adjacent. Only one of these is going to work. Looking at your picture, you're going to know which one you have. You're going to know if you either have the opposite and the hypotenuse, which means you would be doing sine, or if you have the opposite and adjacent, which would mean you are doing tangent. That's why it's so important to draw and label a triangle. So what I'm going to suggest you do again, I'm going to pull this paper away. Our story problem is below there. Stop, write down the whole story problem, and then heck, maybe even try and draw and label a triangle. I don't know. So here is our problem. The base of a ladder is 4 feet from the side of a house. The base of the ladder makes an angle of 40 degrees with the ground. How far up the house does the ladder reach? So pause if you haven't yet, get it all written down. I'm going right on. So what we have here is we have a triangle. That triangle is made up of a ladder that's leaning against a house and the ground. So this is going to be our house because the ladder is the one leaning, so the ladder is the hypotenuse, and then here is the ground. They told us in the problem that the ladder, the base of the ladder, this is the base or the bottom of the ladder, is 4 feet from the side of the house. So this is 4. They also told us the angle that's made between the base of the ladder and the ground is 40 degrees. So this angle right here is 40 degrees. And what they're wanting to know is how high up the house does the ladder reach? They're not asking for how long the ladder is. If they wanted to know how long the ladder was, they'd say, hey, how long is the ladder? Not what they're asking for. They're asking for how high up the house does that ladder reach. So they want to know this distance right here. I'm going to just call this X. So when I get rid of all the garbage, all the background, which you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but it might be easier for you to see, what we're left with, is a triangle that looks like this. Notice we are dealing with degrees here. The book does go back and forth between radians and degrees, so make sure you read carefully on these story problems. So one of these 3 trig functions is going to match this triangle. Well, very clearly here, I do not have the hypotenuse. Since I don't have the hypotenuse, that kind of eliminates the sine and the cosine because they both need the hypotenuse. which only leaves tangent. But I also know I have tangent because I'm given a leg. I'm given a leg that's opposite the 40, and I'm given a second leg that's adjacent to the 40. So therefore, the only one of these three trig functions that deals with the opposite and adjacent leg is tangent. So my equation that I'm going to use is going to be the tangent of my angle equals opposite over adjacent. That same formula I wrote up top. But now I'm going to take the information from the problem and plug it in here for my unknown values. My unknown values here happen to be theta, maybe I'll replace that with a number, opposite, maybe I'll replace that with a number, and adjacent. Maybe I'll replace that with a number. I have to replace two of the three of these with some number. So let's see what we got. Tangent's going to stay tangent. Theta, yep, they gave me theta, it's 40 degrees. Opposite leg, they didn't give it to me, but I labeled that x, so I'm going to put x over adjacent. Adjacent leg is 4. And just like that, I filled in two of the three variables, so now I can go ahead and solve this equation. Every equation is going to be different, so when you're done, you're going to have to step back and look at this. Look at where your variable is at. Think about how you're going to get that variable alone. Go all the way back to Algebra 1. Think, how can I get x by itself? Oh yeah, x is being divided by 4, so if I want to get rid of divide by 4, I'm going to multiply both sides by 4. So I'm going to end up doing 4 times the tangent of 40 degrees equals x. And now I'm ready to pick up my calculator and figure that out. Now, when you go to use your calculator, we are in degrees. I talked about mode the other day. I talked about that in a video too, so hopefully we paid attention. So I want to make sure that I'm in the correct mode. And you can see here, I'm in radians. I want to be in degrees. So I'm going to arrow down and go over to degrees and then get off of that screen. And now I can go ahead and enter in 4 times the tangent of 40. And I don't have to hit degrees because it already knows I'm in degrees because I put it in that mode. And then enter. And the distance up the house it's going to reach is 3.356 feet. Not very tall. It's a short ladder. So that's the distance that I'm going to reach up the house. Really not very much help at all because, you know, most of us are short, or, you know, taller than that. But anyways, I just made these problems up off the top of my head. You'll have to forgive me. These problems probably look familiar to you because you did problems like this in geometry. Okay, and so they should seem very, very familiar to you. This is one of the standards they expect you to know coming out of geometry. All right, that's it. Go do the assignment.